I want to thank Professor Dr. Ian Tignianu, President of the Academy of Sciences of Moldova, and Professor Boris Bonchan, Professor of Soil Science at the University, Aleco Russo University. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about the topics suggested by Professor Dr. Ian Tignianu: agriculture, food security, soil health, and global warming. We begin with Green Revolution, which was a great success story between 1961 and 2020. The global population increased 2.5 times. At present, it is 8.1 billion. In 2020, it was 7.8 billion. Cereal production increased 3.3 times, from 0.9 billion ton to almost 3 billion ton. And therefore, the per capita cereal production increased 32%, 284 kilogram to 376 kilogram per person. And this miracle is appropriately called the Borlaug effect, because it saved hundreds of millions from starvation through the Green Revolution technology developed by Norman Borlaug and several other colleagues. As a result of the Green Revolution, the nitrogen fertilizer increased 9.2 times over the 60-year period, phosphorus fertilizer 5 times, potassium 4.8 times, pesticide use 5.2 times, irrigation 2.4 times, million hectare of 350 to 370 million hectare irrigated land area at present. However, the Green Revolution did have some limitations, which was a very most welcomed development in agriculture to save hundreds of millions of people from starvation. But it does have limitation. Soil degradation is one of them. 1/3 of all soils of the planet are degraded. Agricultural emissions are increasing 1% per year. Undernutrition affects almost 1 billion people, not only because of the war in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, but also that in the Middle East are different than this number I gave you. Prevalence of malnutrition, 2 billion people. Some people consider between 2 and 3 billion, because the diets are not nutritionally adequate. And dependence on fossil fuel, we burn 10 gigaton of carbon per year as fossil fuel, causing severe problem of water pollution and scarcity, which is being aggravated and being accelerated by very rapid urbanization and overall by food waste, which is considered very, very significant component, because 30 to 40% of all food grains are wasted. Some people think 1 billion tons of grains reach no stomach, human or animal. And of course, the Green Revolution was cereal-centric. It was based primarily on 3 cereals: rice, wheat, and corn. Other crops were not involved in this. If you look at the carbon stock in the atmosphere in the context of global warming, pre-agriculture, it was 360 gigaton total carbon in the atmosphere. Giga is billion, 9 zeros. Pre-industrial revolution, circa 1750, the number went by 200 gigaton to 560. At present, it's almost 880 gigaton. Total emission from land use and agriculture since the beginning of agriculture estimated at 575 gigaton, compared with total emission from fossil fuel since circa 1750, about 445 gigaton. As a result, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 315 parts per million of CO2 1960. In 2020, it was 416 parts per million. In 2022, 418 parts per million. in 2022, 420, and in May 23, it was 424 parts per million. The question is, how much carbon from fossil fuel can still be burnt before the tipping point? So let us assume that the carbon stock will go up to double than what it was pre-agriculture, 280 to 560. So 560 minus the current level, 424 multiplied by 2.13 gigaton of carbon per 1 ppm increase in the atmosphere of CO2. That gives us a value of 290 gigaton. The question that the Secretary General of United Nations and other global leaders should consider very carefully is, how do you divide this pie of 290 gigaton amongst 8 billion people of the world, covering about 200 countries throughout the globe? And how can we use recarbonization of the biosphere, putting carbon back in land, soil, vegetation, as a tool to bridge with the future? Global food insecurity has not been addressed. The moderate to severe food insecurity affects 2.3 billion people, 11.7% of total population. In 2021, 936 million people, and not being able to afford healthy diet are about 3.1 billion people. The global food insecurity affects Africa, 20% of the population, Asia, 9% of the population, Latin America and the Caribbean, also 9%, Oceania, about 6%, North America and Europe, 2.5%. Malnutrition aside, the hunger in the United States is estimated at 40 million, of which 2 million are in Ohio. And out of the 2 million people in Ohio, 500,000 people are children. Even if one child goes to bed hungry, it's one too many. Soil degradation affects 33% of soil globally and 52% of agricultural land. And cost of degradation has been estimated. We had a meeting this morning with former colleagues from IFPRI and others, $400 billion per year. Salinization affects 1.5 million hectare new salinized land per year. And that is a very, very serious thing. Global soil erosion affects 1.1 billion hectare, and these estimates need to be improved, updated. 1994 was the estimate 1.1 billion by water erosion, 0.6 billion by wind erosion, 0.9 billion hectare by salinization, and sediment load transport in the ocean of the world, 36 gigaton. Soil carbon depletion is estimated at 135 gigaton. There are other estimates which are lower, like 120 gigaton, but we are talking about somewhere between 100 to 150 gigaton of soil organic carbon lost from cropland and agricultural land of the world. Threshold level of soil organic matter content is about 2.5 to 3.5% for optimal crop growth in the root zone. Organic carbon content about half of that, 1.5 to 2.0%. And the crop yield increases in depleted soil with the increase in soil organic matter content in the root zone, and the optimum level is somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5%, closer to 2.5%. Most degraded soils of the developing world, especially in Africa, Central America and the Caribbean, part of South Asia, can be less than 0.5%. Therefore, there's a need for eco-intensification. I'd like to consider difference between eco-intensification and sustainable intensification. Eco is you are looking at ecological efficiency of input. The goal is to produce more crop from less land, less water, less input of chemicals, less use of energy, and less emission of greenhouse gases. save land and water for nature. Out of 5.2 billion hectares, rather than bringing more land under production by 2050, we should return land back to nature. And we should create a positive carbon budget by adopting practices which are site-specific, which increase carbon stock in soil, so that the gains of carbon by practices such as compost, biochar, cover crop, conservation agriculture, always are more than the losses due to erosion, leaching, and decomposition. This is the ideal situation that lead to soil carbon sequestration. Unfortunately, in many parts of the world, especially with resource poor farmer, which are 500 to 600 million globally, gains of carbon in soil are always less than the losses. Therefore, the soil is continuously being depleted and degraded. Therefore, we talk about regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is a concept, it's a philosophy, it's an ideology, it's an approach. It's not a practice. There are many practices which come under regenerative agriculture. It's a concept which is inspired by eco-innovation. It's powered by non-carbon energy. It's driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure. And it's supported by the recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere as the bedrock of sustainable development. Recarbonization. Remember, we have lost carbon from soil, and in addition, we have lost from vegetation. Total, we have lost as much as 500 gigaton or more since the beginning of agriculture. An important aspect of regenerative agriculture is the agroecology. Agroecology means application of ecological principles to agricultural systems and practices, or the branch of science concerned with the new carbon method, such as agroecology, increasing yield while reducing environmental impact. In other words, the concept of regenerative agriculture and agroecology is to restore soil health while sustaining productivity and producing more from less. That is the concept. We recommend using cover crops and conservation agriculture, and keeping the ground always covered so that soil is always having live biomass on it as much as possible. And the concept very much promoted by Professor Boris Vanchan, CNPK. C means putting biomass carbon back into the land rather than NPK. As the C concentration in soil increases to the optimum level of about 2% carbon or 3 to 3.5% organic matter, the need for NPK progressively decreases because of increase in the use efficiency and reduction in the losses. Therefore, the soil health management involves, of course, choice of appropriate species, appropriate varieties, appropriate cultivar, which can hopefully communicate with the managers, land managers, the farmers, on what are the stresses happening before intervention can be helpful, so that the losses by those stresses, biological and biotic and abiotic, the crop yield and productivity is not decreased. And this plant is grown by mulch farming, by cover cropping, with a very good root biomass, with combination of mycorrhiza, rhizobia, and integration of this crop with trees and livestock, so that we have more sustained system, and soils are healthy enough with high biodiversity, so they become disease suppressive. Therefore, the need for pesticides becomes less and less. And if any additional fertilizer and nutrients are required, they should be applied directly to the plant roots through drip fertigation system, so that they are absorbed by plant and do not leak out into the environment. The rate of carbon sequestration can be about 1.5 metric ton per hectare per year for wetland restoration, for CRP and afforestation in temperate climate, maybe about 1 metric ton. for turf grass management and other green lawns, about half a ton, no-till farming between 300 and 500 kilogram per hectare, rangeland management about 100 to 200 kilogram per hectare. Global technical potential of carbon sequestration in all soils of the world, if they are managed properly, 5.2 billion hectare under agricultural ecosystem, is about 2.5 gigaton, petagram, billion ton of carbon per year under ideal condition. This is not what we have now. Out of cropland area of 1.5 billion hectare, at present, conservation agriculture is practiced only on about 200 million hectare. So we have a long way to go. In addition to soil, between now and 2100, the technical capacity of carbon storage, organic carbon, is 178 gigaton, petagram, billion ton, vegetation 155, total about 333, which means a reduction in the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere by 2100 by 157 parts per million. This is only organic carbon. Inorganic carbon, which is a more important component in soils of arid and semi-arid region, is separate. Therefore, if the renewable energy can be adopted, non-carbon fossil fuel can be adopted soon, hopefully in 2030 or beyond, in a real near future, and we improve land management and soil and farming system, making agriculture a solution, keeping global warming to below 2 degrees centigrade and even up to 1.5 degrees is still possible through better agriculture, by making agriculture a solution. However, the farmer, the land manager, the rancher, they must be rewarded, and they should be rewarded according to $50 per credit. And one credit is 1 ton of CO2 equivalent, $50 per credit. And that means if a farmer sequesters half a ton of carbon, they should be paid about $100 per hectare, $40 per acre, 1/3 of a ton, about $70 per hectare, $28 per acre. But one concept which is very important, very critical, is the law of return. The law of return was proposed by Sir Albert Howard, who was the then president of India's Science Academy in 1918 to 1920. And the law of return says, replace what is removed. Whatever you take from soil, you must put it back, one way or the other. Respond wisely to what is changed and predict what may happen from anthropogenic and natural perturbation, and restore soil quality and functionality as an important component of a national, regional, and international Soil Health Act. I'll come back to that in a moment. Therefore, the question is, how can you meet the food demand by 2050 and beyond? In fact, the world already produces enough food to feed 10 billion people. So the problem is how to reduce waste, increase access to food, which is affected by poverty, inequality, wars. It's very serious disruption caused by political instability and, of course, turmoil. And we must improve distribution, increase use of pulses and plant-based diet, accept personal responsibility. Each one of 8 billion people is a culprit and a victim. Therefore, each one of us, have a personal responsibility to banning all wars. If the humanity has an authority to do that, that should be done, and we must increase agronomic productivity from existing land, restore degraded land, improve biological nitrogen fixation by legumes, convert some agricultural land for nature, and on the remaining land, adopt practices which have a high eco-intensification. We should also address megacities, food production in megacities. Megacity is a city of more than 10 million people. There were 3 megacities in the world in 1975, 10 in 1990, 16 in 2000, 28 in 2014, 31 in 2016, in 2025 next year, there'll be 37 mega cities, 41 in 2030, and 15 2050, 17 2075, 83 in 2100. The largest city by 2100 will have 90 million people. And a city of 10 million people requires 6,000 tons of food per day. Therefore, city planning must have a component of recycling water and nutrient to produce some fresh food within the city limit. City planners should plan in such a way that perhaps 10 to 20% of the food consumed can be grown within the city limit. We must also think about the plant species. Total plant species 250,000. Edible plant species are 30,000. Those used for food are about 7,000. And there are many crop varieties which have disappeared over the last 100 years. And the neglected crops or traditional crop should be given a very high priority. We must also think that the way food is produced and consumed, it affects the health of soil, plants, animal, people, ecosystem, and the planet. That's the One Health concept. Therefore, the global food demand by population at present and in future can be met simply by food systems which are traditional, probably plant-based diet, and serious problem of undernutrition, which really depends back on soil health and its improvement. So somewhere degraded soil as a cause of malnutrition, soil degradation as a cause of human malnutrition must be addressed through diverse diet and using traditional food as much as possible. We must teach and promote in colleges the One Health concept, which states that the health of soil, plants, animal, human, environment, and planet is one and indivisible. And this concept, as I said, came from Sir Albert Howard, but it is also something that John Muir, an American philosopher, who said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And that's the One Health concept. It's an approach in the context of origin and emergence of novel diseases. I think it's very important to consider that One Health concept, and it has to be extended beyond soil, air, and water to the environment as a whole. We must consider food is a medicine. A healthy food is a medicine. An unhealthy food, on the contrary, is a slow poison. And that part is very critical to understand. Ayurveda, a Sanskrit epic, Sanskrit literature book, states when the diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when the diet is right, medicine is of no need. Right diet, of course, comes from a healthy soil. A healthy soil, therefore, is the source of all the nourishment. It provides food to nourish our bodies. It gives rise to knowledge that nourishes our minds and shares a beauty that nourishes our souls. Sustainable food systems are very important to this part, and sustainable food systems are those that relate to the way in which the food is produced, processed, distributed, prepared, consumed, and waste disposed of. Food environment refers to the interface where people interact with the wider food system to acquire and consume foods. These environments may include wild, cultivated, and built land. There are 5 C's of achieving food and nutrition security, which must be addressed. One is climate change, COVID, obviously, and other conflicts, East Europe, Middle East, cash crops, large-scale production rather than the traditional crop, cereal-based diet, 50% of the diet in sub-Saharan Africa rather than recommended only 15%. Some traditional crops are very important. In Australia, they include bush tomato, desert lime, kakadu plum, and wattle seed. In Central North America, chayote, wild rice, tapri bean, ramon nuts. In Central South Asia, jackfruit, mung bean, rice bean. In East Asia, buckwheat, fenugreek, hemp, winged bean. In Europe, chicory grass, pea, and orchid. Middle East, angan, bambara bean, purslane, sorghum, millet. South America, cherimoya, custard apple, maca, peach palm, areca. And in sub-Saharan Africa, of course, finger millet, locust bean, marama, marula tree, many other traditional food. And pulses, which are very, very beneficial, genus Vigna, mung beans, Vigna radiata, very high traditional value, drought tolerance, short growth cycle, Cicer aritinum, chana, the chickpeas, many bioactive compounds. They contain abundant of vitamins, protein, carbohydrates, lipids, fibers, minerals, and pigeon pea, kazan. It has deep rooted system, high nutritional value. It's a perennial and it's very soil restorative. Nutrient contents of bambara groundnut percent by weight, protein 9%, fat 3%, iron 823 parts per million. So traditional food has many, many benefits. They're highly nutritious, certain health benefits, metabolite, vitamin, and other nutrients locally available and resilient to many, many abiotic and biotic stresses. And they can, of course, be grown on less productive and marginal land along with the adaptation to climate change, and they require less inputs. There are also wild edible plants, acacia seed, for example, composition of raw zamne, protein content 40 to 43%, fat 10 to 12%, dietary fiber gram per 100 gram, 17 to 29, insoluble fiber 13. So very nutritious. So thinking about relying more on traditional crops. And finally, I would strongly recommend at our Science Academy of Moldova and other academies to promote the possibility of Soil Health Act. So that combined with Air Act and Clean Water Act of the US, and the US still does not have Healthy Soil Act. A Healthy Soil Act where soils are protected, like a rights of soil, being a living entity, promoting agricultural sustainability, and using soil as a very precious resource. Finally, I'd like to say something about peace and science. Peace is not a political issue by itself. Peace is also a scientific issue. So advancing science of soil health, nutrition-sensitive agriculture, food processing, and biofortification are critical and high-priority scientific issues with strong impact on world peace and stability. Therefore, restoring soil health is a peace-promoting process. The ongoing issue of soil degradation and adopting nutrition-sensitive agricultural practices are the acts of peace promotion throughout the world. Some do's of agriculture, adopting conservation agriculture, recycling of crop residue and animal waste, providing clean cooking fuel, protecting prime agricultural land against urbanization, planting trees on land with more than 7% slope, revising curricula at the school so that we can talk about soil and environmental education, and of course, encouraging religious organization to preach land ethics and protect soil and nature, increasing dialogue with policymakers and scientists, and involving communities in soil restoration. Some don'ts: infield burning of crop residue, flood-based irrigation, removal of topsoil for brick making, broadcasting of fertilizer in water and soil, plowing and puddling of the soil, traditional fuels, uncontrolled grazing, free roaming cattle, storage of grain in the open under plastic cover. Some places that happens because there is no storage facility. Subsidies for flood irrigation, nitrogen fertilizer. That's a misuse of water and nitrogen. And of course, use of crop residue for other uses. And finally, all wars lead to ecocide. All war degrades soil and destroy nature. A war leads to environmental destruction or ecocide and violation of rights of nature in general and those of soil in particular. Ecocide leading to destruction of nature and soil must be included within the International Criminal Court jurisdiction. As presently stated, the statute of ICC, the International Criminal Court, does not place the war-related soil degradation and pollution, water eutrophication, environmental contamination, wildlife destruction, deforestation, and destruction of biodiversity under its jurisdiction. These actions also aggravate global warming, and they must be considered under ICC. War affects soil health. Whether the missiles are fired because of hatred or fear, both people and soil suffer. Nobody talks about damage to soil. War changes soil from a womb for a terrestrial life into a tomb of all dead. War turns bonds of soil and life into bondage of slavery and death. War nails the living, but encourages humanity to worship the dead. We must make all wars unacceptable. Famines are also man-made tragedies like war. We must make famine, mass starvation politically intolerable, morally toxic, ethically unthinkable, and humanly unacceptable through restoration of soil health. I want to thank once again Professor Tagliano and Professor Boris Bonchin for your kindness in inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you. Good day.